Hello and welcome back to Mark's House and Garden UK, where I've just started the biggest DIY project of my life, which is converting a large double garage in the garden of my cottage into a guest annex. Now at the moment it's a blank canvas, but it's going to include a bedroom, a gym, a music room, some office space and a small ensuite shower room. And I'm going to attempt all that work myself, with the exception of the electrics, because I'm not a qualified electrician. And I'm going to be doing it by the book. I'm going to be getting planning permission and building regs approval and sign off. And all these DIY jobs I'm going to share with you in videos. But I've had this garage for 2 years now, and it's always been my intention to convert it into a guest annex. But I've procrastinated. And I was reflecting on the reasons why I procrastinated, and I thought it might be helpful to share those reasons and also to give you some information on how I managed to get started. So in this video, I'm going to share my 6 steps for getting started on a large DIY project. Now this might not be directly applicable to you, but certain of them I know definitely will. And the first one is one of those that will probably apply to everyone. The first thing I needed to do in order to stop procrastinating was to get my mindset right. Now, I've already said the word overwhelming because it is a big project, this, for me. And if I sit down and think about it as a whole, it would just overwhelm me. And that's one of the reasons why I've not actually got started. When I talk about mindset, when I've spoken to friends and family and people about this project, many of them have said things like, "Oh, that's a big project. Oh, it's very complicated. Oh, there's a lot of work there. Oh, good luck with planning. Don't hold your breath." And all these little negative thoughts get inside your head and hold you back. So the first thing I think people need to do, and this is certainly applicable to me, is get the mindset right. Getting the mindset right involves changing how you see things. So I've started to decide to see this as something that I very much can do, and I very much will do. And I will ignore all those negative voices, including my own negative voice. We all have a little imposter in our brains. I'm going to put those to one side, and my attitude now will be, I can do this and I will do this. And even though I'm not capable of all the skills that will be involved right now of doing this, I'll have a learning attitude. So I am now open-minded to the idea of learning new things and prepared to accept that I'm actually incapable and incompetent right now. But I am going to gain those competencies. And let's face it, nobody is born with a chip in the brain that says to them, you know how to lay an insulated floor, you know how to stud out a wall. Tradespeople know how to do that because they've learned how to do it. And to us, the lay people, it looks complicated, and sometimes it's in the vested interest of tradespeople to make it look complicated because it puts us off from having a go ourselves. But in actual fact, if you break it down, none of it is beyond the wit of any of us. Sometimes you do need qualifications, but a lot of the things that you can do on a project like this, you can do yourself. And then it's just a question of making the decision to start. And once you've made that decision to start, you can get started. So be open-minded, be a learner, have a can-do attitude, and then start watching YouTube videos. I suggest you should probably sit down for 2 weeks and watch an hour of YouTube every night about the project that you're doing. So in this case, I just Googled garage conversion and thousands of videos came up, and I just started watching them. And it's surprising how quickly, within the first hour, how many things started to get into my head which were giving me ideas about how I will approach this project. I had some fixed ideas in my own head about how I would start them. And those ideas were very complicated. But by watching videos on YouTube, and lots of videos on YouTube, they started to become simplified because I started to see the small steps that you can take to get towards that complicated outcome. So step number 2 for me is start learning before you start doing. Get on YouTube or any other website that you can find with videos on it. And if you prefer reading, read blogs. I learn by watching people do and by doing myself. So that's why videos are my favourite way of learning. But you could read instruction manuals if you prefer to read. Watch, read, learn and repeat. Keep going back, and as more questions get thrown up, find another video that answers that question. And before you know it, you'll have a lot more experience and knowledge in your head than when you started. And that will equip you to then go on to the next stage. Now, I think the next stage really is a little bit boring, but nevertheless essential. Whatever your project is, sit down and start to scope it out. So what do I mean by scope it out? Well, get a piece of paper, and I've got mine here. It's just an A4 piece of paper. Write in the middle of the piece of paper the name of the project. And then, given that you've already watched a load of YouTube videos on what you might need to do, start applying those thoughts to your own project. So for example, mine says garage conversion in the middle, and then to the right it says planning permission, and underneath that it says building regulations approval. Then it says insulation, and then there's an arm coming off that says insulate floor, and then there's another one that says insulate ceiling, insulate roof, insulate walls. And before you know it, you'll have a mind map on a piece of paper that will inform you and help you to understand and unravel all those knots about your project. And I call that scoping it out. And then watch some more videos, and then come back and scope a bit more, and then watch some more videos and come back and scope a bit more. Sometimes it's a question of rinse, repeat, you know. Do it, review it, repeat, and see what comes out the other end. And eventually, the scoping out, which to me looks like a big spider, a big mind map, will become a plan. Now, the next point for me, and you might not need to do this, because this depends on whether you've got limited resources. I want to know how much this is going to cost. And if you're anything like me, you'll also be the same. You'll also want to know whether it's within your budget. So my next point is budgeting. Once you've got your scope of works, you can then start to apply some budgets to each individual part. Now, you might not have the knowledge or the experience or the know-how to know exactly how much each bit will cost, but you can start off by putting an estimation to it. Now, I got a quote from an electrician for my first fix and then the second fix, so I know exactly how much the electrics has cost, so I can put that on there, and I have done. I've put the cost of the electrics in, but at this stage I really don't know how much all the insulation is going to cost, but I can have a guess, and I can put that figure down. Now, that figure will be open to review because it's a guesstimate, but it's a starting point, and you can do that to all elements of this, and then you can fine-tune them and review them. And as you do that and start adding them all together, you'll have an idea of the budget for the whole project. Now, budgets, they do say that you should double them. Now, I think if you've got an accurate budget, that's probably going a little bit too far. But you should have a contingency, because a project like this will always throw up the unexpected. If you've watched grand designs as many times as I have, you'll know that will always throw up a surprise. So have a contingency fund and be reasonable about it. Maybe 10%, maybe 20%. But now, if you think about where you're at, you've made the decision to start, you've done some learning, you've gained some knowledge, you've scoped it out, and you've now got a budget. And also in your brain, whether you think it or not, you'll have a lot more knowledge and a much better idea of the direction of travel for your project. And that's where I am now, but I've taken a couple of extra steps. And these are the last two steps I'm going to tell you about. And these are the steps that I think will probably foil or stop most people from moving forwards. And that's the idea of getting planning permission and building regs approval. Now in the past, traditionally, I think people have probably thought, well, I need to get planning permission, therefore I need an architect. I need an architect, therefore it's going to cost me a lot of money. Therefore I'm not going forwards. Well, I want you to readdress that question and ask it again. Do you actually need an architect? I found that I didn't. I went on the local planning site for my local council and I clicked on planning applications, and there's a lot of information on there about what you need, and I just sat there one morning and read it. And then I put apply for permission. I've not spent any money yet and I've not employed an architect. And it sent me through to the planning portal, which in the UK is the overall planning application site. What happens is you go on your local authority. That sends you to the planning portal. You apply on the planning portal and then it sends it back to your local authority. But in the process of doing that, before you've spent a penny, you find out what you need. And it's actually a lot simpler than you think for a garage conversion. So as I said, by starting the process and going along the process a little bit, you find out what you need in terms of your planning application. Now this is what's known as a householder application. You don't need a full set of plans for this, and you don't need architects. You just need a site plan, a block plan, and some elevations, and you need to be able to describe what you're doing at this stage. We'll come to building regs in a minute, but that is a lot simpler than I expected it to be. Now, where do you get a site plan from? Well, very helpfully, the planning portal now has a function where you can click get site plan, you put your postcode in, and it must be GPRS or something, and it just generates a site plan for you, and it cost me £11 to get that. Then I got a block plan in the same way. So I've already ticked 3 of the things. Another one of the things was a declaration that you own the land. That's straightforward. Before you know it, you've got saved an almost complete planning application. And then you can review it. Now the thing about the elevations was complicated for me, slightly complicated. But I went back to my open mindset and I thought to myself, how can I solve this? And the way I did that was I used PowerPoint. If you're familiar with PowerPoint, it's a presentation software and you use it generally in meetings where you present onto a slide. But I found in there that you can actually use shapes. So you can draw a rectangle, you can draw a triangle and a circle, and you can do any free-form shapes. And I use that to generate the elevations for my garage block. Basically, it's a rectangle with a triangle on top for the front elevation. The window is a rectangle. The garage doors are rectangles. The side door over there is a rectangle. And I used all those shapes and I basically put them onto a slide. Then I discovered that you can scale them. So if in reality the dimensions of the side wall are 6 meters by 2.5 meters, you can put that into the dimensions of the shape and it will readjust it. And by playing around with it and adjusting it, eventually I've now got scale drawings of my elevations. The next thing I did was I just had some text boxes with some arrows and pointed them at the shapes so that the planners can understand. Before you know it, you've got your own drawings that look as good as any other that would be produced by an architect, and you've done it for free. And if it takes you a whole day and you save yourself a £500 architect fee, it's worth doing. So I used PowerPoint and I saved them as a PDF, which is a file that can't be altered, and I saved them up into the planning application. Now, everything I've said might start to sound complicated to you right now. But if you go back to that open mindset from the start, the can-do attitude, and just believe that you can do it, break it down into small chunks, put those negative voices to one side, you'll realise that you can do it too. If you've got any questions about what I've said, drop them in the comments box below this video and I'll happily answer them. Let's turn to building regulations. Now, I want building regulations for this. I want sign off. I want it to be done by the book. There's lots of reasons for that. I never intend selling this house. I do intend dying here in the end, but you never know what can come up in life, and I might have to sell it one day. So I want this to be signed off so that there's no complications in the sales process. Also, if I do this and my mum comes to stay and there's a fire and the worst happens, and I've not got building regs, how will I feel? And also, will I be liable? So I do want building regs, and I will get building regs. Building regs sounds like officialdom. It sounds very official, and it sounds very scary. Put that thought out of your head. First thing I did was email building control at the local council, and within 10 minutes I had an email back answering a simple question. And I found them to be extremely helpful. In my area, they'll actually come out and have a look at your project for you and give you some advice. With that in mind, I decided to fill in a building regs application. Now, there's all kinds of different ones you can do. If you're building a house, you do a full application with plans, and they'll review your plans for you. For something like this, at this scale, a DIY project, you just put in a notice of building, and then they get involved. And so what I will now do before I start work is the man or the person is going to come out, have a look, tell me what I need to do, then I'll do it. So it's like having an instructor. And by doing that, by complying with what they say, they will then sign it off. Now, I've got a very good idea of what I want to do, because I've been watching lots of YouTube videos, which was point 2 or 3 from earlier. So I have an idea of how I'm going to approach this. But some of the fine tuning and the tweaks to make sure it's compliant with building regs, I will ask the building controls officer when they come out on Thursday in 2 days' time. So that's how you understand building regs. You don't need to know it all. You just need to know the bits that apply to your project. And those little bits you can get from the building control officer when they come out. It's as simple as that. And I wouldn't have got to this stage now if I hadn't decided to start and had an open mind and taking it to the next stage. So there we go. Those are my 6 steps on getting started on your garage conversion, which can probably be applied to any DIY project. You might not need planning permission for yours. You might be able to do it under permitted development rights. I can't do that because I'm in a listed building, and anything in the curtilage or the grounds has to get approval. Hope you found that interesting and useful. I know it's kind of a splurge of thoughts. It'll be good for me to review this in 6 months' time when I come back and I'm halfway through the project. And again, if you're an expert, DIYer or a tradesperson, please do comment below if you've got anything to add that's constructive, and then anyone that's watching this video can benefit from the YouTube hive mind. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon for some more DIY and garden adventures. Bye for now.